Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I want to talk about the top 10 best films of the decade. It's hard enough to make a top 10 list for a specific year. Making one for a whole decade, you're cutting out a bunch of really good movies. You might have 100 movies you're all vying for one spot on this list. But in the end, I could only pick 10 for each decade. So I hope you guys like the list, but keep in mind, they're not going to be perfect. I'm going to disagree with you on some things, and I haven't even seen every movie to ever come out, ever. I'm sorry. I might just have missed it. I've watched a lot of movies recently, guys. I'm sorry. I tried to get them all, I just couldn't. So please don't hate me, just leave your top 10 list in the comments below and we can talk about it there. And also please like and share, that helps me out a lot, and if you're new here, subscribe. But that's enough for me. Let's get to this list. Number 10. Double Indemnity. Double Indemnity is a 1944 film written and directed by Billy Wilder, starring Fred MacMurray and Edward G. Robinson. The plot of the film follows an insurance agent who's seduced by a woman into murdering her husband to collect the insurance money. But things aren't as simple as they first appear and get complicated very quickly. And this might actually be my favorite film noir of all time. They show you the ending right at the beginning, but you're still waiting the whole time to figure out how you get from point A to B. You have the answer right there, but you still feel lost for the majority of this movie. I absolutely adore the writing in this, and I love the acting too, especially Edward G. Robinson is phenomenal. The 1940s is the best decade in film history, so to get on this list at all is very impressive. Number 9. Rope. Rope is a 1948 film directed by Alfred Hitchcock, starring Jimmy Stewart, John Dahl, and Farley Granger. The plot of the film follows two men as they attempt to pull off the perfect crime possible: murder in plain sight. They're so sure that they can get away with it that they hide the body in the apartment and then host a dinner party. But one thing that they didn't count on was Jimmy Stewart. As to be expected from Hitchcock, the directing is masterful, and as to be expected from Stewart and co, the acting is great. The movie does employ a gimmick, however, as it's filmed and edited to look like it's all one shot. Hitchcock admitted that it was a failed experiment, but honestly, it was really well done for what they had at the time. It is choppy and it can get distracting at times, but it never takes away from how great this movie is. Number 8. Murder, He Says. Murder, He Says is a 1945 film directed by George Marshall, starring Fred MacMurray. The plot follows a pollster as he accidentally stumbles upon a treasure hunt hosted by a murderous family of hillbillies. The family gets it into their heads that he knows where the treasure is and that he's hiding it from them. However, he doesn't know, so he must escape or die. And as you can tell from this very cheery plot, this is a hilarious comedy. On the surface, it just looks like a murder mystery, and it does have a great plot with twists and turns and treachery, but in reality, it's one of the greatest comedies ever made. It manages to be one of the funniest and most quotable movies of all time while also maintaining a really interesting mystery plot. You could watch it just for the comedy or just for the mystery and still love it either way. It's just that good. Number 7. The Third Man. The Third Man is a 1949 film directed by Carol Reed, starring Joseph Cotton and Alida Valli. A novelist travels to Vienna to visit an old friend, only to find himself caught up in the middle of a murder mystery of that same friend. But not everything seems to be as simple as they say it is. From the police to the black market to dirty politics, everything seems just a bit off. And this story is just masterfully written. I absolutely adored this plot. I love movies that make me think, and I love even more movies that are smarter than I am, and this movie had me scratching my head for a good portion of it. The directing is absolutely amazing. I love the Dutch angles and all the camera work in this, and then the music is just so good and so unique. This movie very easily could have been basic and boring, but they did everything they could to make it unique and great, new and interesting. This movie is just awesome. Number 6. The Stranger. The Stranger is a 1946 film directed by Orson Welles, starring Orson Welles and Edward G. Robinson. The plot follows an investigator from the War Crimes Commission as he travels to find an infamous Nazi hiding out in a small town in Connecticut. And I just absolutely love the battle of wits between Orson Welles and Edward G. Robinson's characters in this. Both characters are so brilliant in this, and you hate seeing one of them have to lose. Orson Welles' performance is fantastic, and his character is extremely underrated. He's one of my favorite villains of all time. This movie is amazing and practically flawless. Number 5. Arsenic and Old Lace. Arsenic and Old Lace is a 1944 film directed by Frank Capra and starring Cary Grant. The plot of the film revolves around a man who's shocked to find that his relatives are homicidal maniacs and that insanity runs in the family. This is the original dark comedy, and oh my god, is it funny. This movie was so far ahead of its time in what it was willing to do for a joke, and I'm not complaining about that in the least. The writing is so good, the directing is so good, all the acting is great, every single character in this movie is so much fun to watch. Even if they're not doing anything, you just enjoy watching them in the background. Everyone is just phenomenal. This movie is absolutely absurd and it's balls to the walls fun, and man, I enjoy it. Number 4. Casablanca. The top 4 movies on this list are absolutely perfect, and you can rearrange them and put them in whatever order you want. They're all flawless. This is just the order that I put them in because it's what I think, but it's such a small margin that really, they're all basically equal. Casablanca is a 1942 film directed by Michael Curtis, starring Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. The plot of the film revolves around a man in the midst of a love triangle and World War II political drama as he tries to decide whether or not to help his ex-lover and her fugitive husband escape from French Morocco. This might not sound like a plot that you're interested in, but I promise you, if you like film, you'll love this movie. So it doesn't even matter what the movie's about, everything is just so beautiful to look at. From the acting to the writing to the directing to the camera work to just everything is just perfectly done. Humphrey Bogart is absolutely fantastic in this role, and Ingrid Bergman is just as good. The characters feel real and the dialogue is extremely sharp and very quotable, and everything about this movie is just flawless. Number 3. The Great Dictator. The Great Dictator is a 1940 film written and directed, produced, starring everything Charlie Chaplin. He did everything. The plot of the film is twofold as it follows a Jewish barber attempting to survive in the ghetto while simultaneously following the dictator about his everyday life. It might sound odd to say that Chaplin was revolutionary for saying that Hitler was bad, but keep in mind that this movie came out the same year that Hitler was named Time's Man of the Year. Think about that. This movie was an extreme risk on multiple fronts for Chaplin. Not only the political edge to it, but this was also the first time that he spoke in one of his films. He had never made a sound film before, and this was a whole new territory for him. But it paid off in a big way, as this is one of the greatest films ever made. It's extremely hilarious, but it's also poignant and slow and intellectual when it needs to be. This movie had a lot to say, and it wasn't afraid to say it, and it said it all beautifully. Sometimes it was said with pictures like Chaplin was used to, but sometimes it was said with the most eloquent monologue ever put to film. Chaplin was already a great comedian and comedy director, but this one solidified him as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, auteurs of all time. Number 2. It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life is a 1946 film directed by Frank Capra, starring Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed. The plot of the film follows a man who loses everything and so wishes that he had never been born. He is then visited by an angel who shows him what the world would look like if his wish was granted. And this is simply the most iconic story ever told. How many times has this been redone, remade, parodied? In some form or another, we get this movie remade and repackaged for us practically every year. Frank Capra is one of the greatest directors of all time, and of course, Jimmy Stewart steals the show in every single shot, every scene, every moment. He's amazing. His character holds so much weight and sorrow throughout the movie. You can just see it on his face, in his eyes, and he holds it so well and so authentically. This movie is so good and so powerful and so important. It's often regulated as simply a Christmas movie, but it doesn't need to be. You can watch this at any time. It's always just as good. This isn't just the greatest Christmas movie ever. It's debatably the greatest movie ever made. In fact, I would say it was the greatest movie of all time, if not for the one other movie on this list. And the greatest film of the 1940s is Citizen Kane. I mean, you kind of had to see it coming a little bit. Citizen Kane is a 1941 film written, directed, and starring Orson Welles. Following the death of publishing tycoon Charles Foster Kane, reporters scramble to uncover the meaning of his final utterance, Rosebud. Through interviews and flashbacks, we begin to unravel his whole life story. Every little piece helping us to understand who this mysterious Mr. Kane was, and how he went from the seemingly innocent young man to the tyrant that he later became. This movie takes place over an entire lifetime, so you have these same actors playing these characters for their entire life. You have Orson Welles playing Kane at 20 years old, 40, 60, and 80, and that goes for the whole cast. The makeup and the acting is so good and genuine that it's better than any of the CGI garbage we get today. The way that they move, the way that they sound, the way that they act and look, it all just feels real and you believe it every second. Secondly, the camera work is absolutely stunning and brilliant to look at. The acting is all phenomenal. The writing and dialogue is all great. Every single thing that could be great in this movie is. This movie is a 10 out of 10. It's a 100 out of 100. This movie is flawless in every way. There's nothing to critique. There's nothing to point out. It's all just brilliant and amazing. And if you haven't seen this movie, you need to. It is the best movie ever made. If there was a flaw, I would point it out to you guys. I would say it. I'd be honest. I cannot come up with one for this movie. It is flawless. So that's my list. I hope you guys liked it and I hope you agreed with me. I know you didn't, because making these lists is impossible. There's always something to disagree with on just a little bit. So if you did disagree with me, please don't hate me. Just leave it in the comments below, your list and your favorite movie, and we can talk about it there. Also, please like and share. It does help me out a lot. And if you're new here, please subscribe. Thanks guys. Bye.